Greetings, chess friends. Today we're going to look at a very nice chess game, one that had a profound effect on me when I was younger and first saw it. This is between two legends of chess. You can see here below Max Euwe and Paul Keres. If you don't know those names, just type them into the Google machine, figure it out. One of them was the world champion, one of them was on the currency in his country. Real legends. So let's jump into the game. Black will be the winner of this game, so we'll look from Black's perspective here. So knight f3, if you had played knight c3, oftentimes the Nimzo Indian is the response. So if you don't like facing the Nimzo, usually you play knight f3, b6, Queen's Indian defense, and g3. This game was played way back in 1939. The two players playing organized a match, and essentially the winner was supposed to play the world champion at the time, Alexander Alekhine. That match, of course, never happened. Alekhine never played another match. And after the war, he passed away under what some would call controversial circumstances. So, a story for another day. But essentially, this was Keres again winning this game and this match, and this put him first in line, let's call it, to play the champion. Like I said, never happened. Okay. Knight e4, and this Queen's Indian defense is all about controlling the e4 square. Sometimes you'll see d5 played, sometimes, like in this game, you'll see knight e4 a bit early, and then f5, but Black really aims to control that one central square. For example, if you just played, let's say, d6, maybe a move like queen c2, and that square could be White's. Queen c2 as it is anyway. Knight takes knight. And not wanting to damage the pawns with b takes, White recaptures with the queen. Here, d6. A more solid approach. Usually you're not blocking your bishop, but we're not going to get into too many of the details. Here, actually, White is making quite a threat. First one is more of a positional threat, e4, good central control. And a more tactical threat would be a move like knight g5. Knight g5 would be striking at the king, checkmate threatened, but also notice bishop takes bishop, which would then trap the rook. So knight g5 is a serious threat, and Keres answers with f5. Again, controlling e4 and stopping all those threats. Knight e1 and queen c8. The bishops that have both been fianchettoed are staring at each other. And Black says, we can trade, but then my queen will take over that diagonal. e4 is still a very balanced game. Knight d7. d5. That move definitely takes some chances. You are obviously putting all your pawns on the light squares, avoiding then, or I should say, giving up the dark squares, and just making a decision. I'm going to fight on this color square, essentially. Queen takes back. Notice there's a pin here. Knight c5, very natural move. Our knight has found a good home there. Could potentially be kicked out, but at the moment we're guarding e6. We're threatening their queen, and the knight stands well. Still a very balanced game. And from here on out, Black plays just a tremendous game. The openings, again, this game was played some 80 years ago, so the openings, we can forgive them a little, but really the technical side of the game is still at a world-class level. So that's what always impresses me. Bishop h3, and one theme I mentioned is the quality of the pieces. Perhaps there's nothing more important in chess, the king safety and the quality of your pieces. We learn early on in our chess understanding that quality is more important than quantity. And here, let's just keep that in mind. This feels uncomfortable, no doubt, but the quality of the white pieces is not very high. Actually, Black stands a tiny bit better here. So, rook e8. Now remember, the knight is also guarding this. And you can't really play b4 as we mentioned earlier because of bishop. Bishop e3. And then a very nice move solving a problem is just queen d8. Not one of those moves that, wow, stands out to us, but it just solves our only problem. Our only real problem was this pin. We can't, let's say, try to develop another piece. This is just the pressing issue. And Keres solves that with queen sidestepping back to the home square d8. Bishop takes knight, and then a nice in-between move was e takes d5, which threatens the queen. I suspect white probably said, well, your in-between move can be met with my in-between move. But as you see a question mark labeled here, the king just moves, and this pin really just becomes kind of the problem that white cannot solve. Rook d1. And again, there's many variations here we could consider. I'm just more showing the game. And we recapture the bishop on c5. Pawn d4. A really nice pawn chain here, all compact, nice, protected passer. Black is looking good. Here, the bishop is a very strong piece, and there's this really bothersome pin. Everything is looking great for black, and the engine confirms black is not quite a pawn better, but let's say 0.8. f4. I think the idea is to just cement the bishop in with f5, which is logical. But this really opens up the diagonal to the king, which doesn't appear to be really accessible just at the moment. But I remember this position being given to me as one to analyze. Perhaps I was 16, 17, 1800, somewhere around there. And I thought, wow, okay, interesting. Let's look. We have the two bishops, trying to put all those buzzwords together and come up with a variation. I think probably the natural moves for a younger player might be queen e7, queen d6. But I remember actually coming around to the idea of that was played in the game, d3. I remember finding this move and thinking, wow, okay. The next move I thought, yes, I understood. Bishop d4 now, check, and we have this great pin and the two bishops, and I was just patting myself on the back, and I was absolutely stunned by the next move. It's as if I understood, but not really. Queen takes d3. Queen takes d3. Now, you have to be very careful sacrificing, obviously, but keep a close count of the material. What is the resulting position going to look like? And that, after bishop d4, now, of course, a big part of this. That's why we pushed the d-pawn to begin with. And again, we're just reminded of the quality of the pieces. Rook f2, a funny move, offering more material, but the alternative king h1 is actually even worse. Of course, rook is going to take the bishop back. A quick count reveals we have rook and bishop for the queen. But the quality of these bishops and rooks are just so superior to whatever white is going to put together. The open diagonals, the open files, just can't be challenged. So here, again, the threat, let's say, is rook e8 and then rook e2. Going to be deadly. So in alternative to that, white says, please just take the rook as it is. No thanks. Rook takes e6. Remember, this pin is here as long as we want. King f1 saying, well, now just take the rook, and still black doesn't take that free exchange, let's say. To put it in other words, so we can understand, the bishop is superior to the rook. Right? We always take things for granted, 3 and 5 points, we know that, but sometimes the rook just isn't that effective, and this bishop, I'd venture to say, is the best piece on the board. Here's the game. f5, rook e5, f6, trying to drum up some counterplay, but Paul Keres just takes that with no real recourse. So now we have an extra pawn in our pocket. Is our king really in danger? I don't think so. Rook d2, moving it out of harm's way. Bishop c8. This is a fantastic regrouping of the bishop, rerouting, and in fact, still today, the engine's top move, bishop c8. That bishop has been a monster on this diagonal the whole game, and now he chooses to change path over to the h3 square, and you can just feel the X marks the spot here, the rook e1 potential, and this king is really under fire. Knight f4, and the game essentially ends here. There's a forcing tactic. After rook e3, the queen, not too many safe squares, queen b1, Rook f3. Again, every piece is just fantastic here, working from a distance, 2 rooks, 2 bishops, and rook takes f4. A beautiful finish to a beautiful game. Captures the rook, but the next move, very intuitive, rook g8. And the king just doesn't have anywhere safe to go. So a few possibilities would be king h1, which is answered, let's just put that on the board, by bishop to b7, checkmate coming. If you play king f1, we have rook g1, and we pick up the queen. And you really just can't go anywhere else. None of these squares are legal, and these ones we already accounted for, so he plays king f3. Bishop g4, and here is actually where white resigns. If you were to move to the g file, we're going to play bishop f5, which is a check with the rook, and pick up the queen. If you move to e4, the only other option, there would follow rook e8. You have 2 legal moves only. If you play king d3, this is not even picking up the queen. That's checkmate. Checkmate. So the only other possible move is king d5, and then bishop f3 check. Only legal move is queen e4, and a nice looking checkmate here with the 2 bishops covering all the squares. Wow, that game really stuck with me for many years and is still one of my favorite chess games. Really, starting from the move d3 and queen takes. I thought I understood, but queen takes, really was a stunner, and the idea was right, but not quite. The sacrifice really made this one a beautiful concept. So keep this game in mind, the power of the 2 bishops, the quality of your pieces, and look up some games from some of those old players. You will learn a ton from the games of that era. So again, nice story and game, and I hope everyone enjoyed what they saw today, and we'll try to get back to making more good chess content